5 मिनट पहले हमने Assalamu alaikum. So yesterday we discussed liver and biliary tract. I started with hepatitis, and we finished hepatitis. And today I'm going to do autoimmune hepatitis. So first I'm just going to revise the important features of viral hepatitis. As I've told you, there are hepatotropic viruses, which are hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E, which can lead to hepatitis. And there are certain other viruses like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, herpes virus, and adenovirus, which also cause hepatitis, and yellow fever virus too. I hope this is clear when I explained you the incubation period, the disease, the route of transmission, the clinical symptom, and serological markers. I did for hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E individually, and I hope everything is clear. So I'm not going into the details again. I just want to revise the morphology, gross and microscopic appearance of hepatitis. And the gross and microscopic appearance, which I want to bring, I want you to be more clear about it, the microscopic appearance in acute viral hepatitis. As I've told you, there is going to be necrosis of the cell and there is going to be apoptosis of the cell. Around the necrosis, in the case of acute viral hepatitis, it is present inside the lobules, which is called interlobular necrosis. Interlobular necrosis, and sometimes when the necrosis is very severe, it is central to portal bridging necrosis as well. And when the injury is severe and healing occurs by fibrosis, there is going to be post-hepatic cirrhosis. So these were the pictures which I've shown you yesterday as well. So inflammatory infiltrate is present in between the lobules. These macrophages aggregate around the cells, and this is apoptosis is seen as well. Again, I've told you this is apoptosis, and you can see acute inflammatory, lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate present around these apoptotic cells. Again, this is necrosis, and you can see macrophages, and I told you these are scavenger macrophages which take away the dead and necrotic material. This is also interlobular hepatitis. You can see in between the lobules, dense plasmalymphocytic infiltrate which is present, and apoptotic bodies can be seen as well. And chronic hepatitis, I told you there is interface hepatitis. Interface hepatitis means there is hepatitis present within the portal tract, dense inflammatory infiltrate, which spills into the lobule. And the spilling in between the portal tract and the lobule is known as interface hepatitis. I'll show you the pictures as well. This is interface hepatitis. Inflamed portal tract, upper right, these are inflamed portal tract present in the upper right, and there is wedge-like extension which is going into the lobule, and this is called interface hepatitis. And this is the fibrosis which can be present, or necrosis which can be present between the portal tract to the central vein. It is the bridging necrosis which can occur in cases of chronic hepatitis, and this will be replaced by bridging fibrosis. I told you in hepatitis B viral infection, there is ground glass appearance of the hepatocyte. This is a ground glass appearance, and this is because of the hepatitis B surface antigen, which is present in the endoplasmic reticulum, which gives it a ground glass appearance. This is hepatitis C viral infection, in which you can see lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate present within the portal tracts, and portal tracts are expanded, and you can see dense chronic inflammatory infiltrate composed of lymphocytes and plasma cells. The cirrhosis results into, the chronic hepatitis results in cirrhosis. You can see small nodules present on the surface of the cirrhosis. This is known as micronodular cirrhosis. And in macronodular cirrhosis, large nodules are going to be formed. Then we did the viral hepatitis, acute infection in viral hepatitis B. 70% is subclinical, 30% has icteric disease, which is that you can see the jaundice. Icteritis means yellowish discoloration of the skin, sclera, and mucous membrane. 90% of subclinical they recover. 0.5% can become into permanent hepatitis, and 0.5%, less than 5% can go into chronic hepatitis. from both acute disease and subclinical disease. Out of these 5%, 2% will recover, 30% will have a healthy carrier, and 10 to 12 to 20% will go into cirrhosis. And out of this 12 to 20%, 6 to 5% will go into hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a complication this of chronic hepatitis is cirrhosis and hepatocellular carcinoma. These are the complication of chronic viral hepatitis B. Hepatitis C is less common than B, but it is more dangerous than B. Its acute stage is less dangerous than B, but it is goes into more chronicity, and it is also very closely linked to hepatocellular carcinoma. So this was a brief description of what we did yesterday. So now we are going to do autoimmune liver disease. Autoimmune liver disease. Excuse me. ये जरा कल भी मैं आपको गई थी सही नहीं आ रहा. Sorry for the interruption. I'm going to call him because I cannot see the whole of the slide. ये इस तरह पूरी slide नहीं आ रही.
पूरी slide
नहीं. आपको यूं आ रही है.
हाँ जी. वो जैसे आपने उसकी सेटिंग की हुई है उसके वैसे ही है ना.
अच्छा मैंने वैसे ऐसे नहीं की.
वो एनिमेशन और फॉन्ट वगैरह लगे होते हैं ना उसकी वजह से ये वाली चीजें होती हैं.
Sorry for the interruption. Autoimmune liver diseases. There are autoimmune hepatitis, primary biliary cirrhosis, and primary sclerosing cholangitis. Today we are going to do autoimmune hepatitis. Autoimmune hepatitis is a chronic progressive hepatitis with all the features of autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases you have done in your third year, and it means that these are those diseases which are caused by antibodies produced to your self-antigens. So autoimmune hepatitis also come into the same category of autoimmune diseases. The antibodies are formed against the self-antigens or against the liver antigens, so leading to autoimmune hepatitis. Presence of autoantibodies and therapeutic response to immunosuppression is also present there. This autoimmune hepatitis has a strong HLA association. HLA, all of you know, is human leukocytic antigen. And it supports that there is a genetic predisposition for autoimmune hepatitis. The triggers for autoimmune hepatitis are viral infection and toxin exposure. So autoimmune hepatitis is that form of hepatitis in which autoantibodies are formed against the self-antigen, and it is an HLA-associated autoimmune disorder. And this is triggered by immune reactions and triggered by viral infections or toxin exposure. There are two types of autoimmune hepatitis depending upon the circulating autoantibodies. Autoantibodies means self antibodies against your self-antigen. Auto means against your self-antigen. So there is type 1 and type 2 type of autoimmune hepatitis. In type 1, it is more commonly seen in middle-aged to older individuals. It is characterized by presence of anti-nuclear antibodies, anti-smooth muscle actin antibodies, anti-soluble liver antigen or liver pancreas antigen, or anti-mitochondrial antibodies. So in type 1 autoimmune hepatitis, we can see 4 types of autoantibodies. These are anti-nuclear antibodies, anti-smooth muscle actin antibodies, anti-soluble liver antigen / liver pancreas antigen antibodies, and anti-mitochondrial antibodies. These are the 4 kinds of antibodies which are present in the type 1, and it is mostly seen in middle to older individuals. In type 2 autoimmune hepatitis, it is seen in children and teenagers. The main serological markers are anti-liver kidney microsomal 1 antibodies, which are directed against cytochrome P450-2D6 enzyme, and anti-liver cytosol 1 antibodies. So in type 2, mostly seen in children and teenagers, there are 2 kinds of antibodies which are present. Number 1 is anti-liver kidney microsome 1 antibodies, and these antibodies are directed against the cytochrome P450-2D6 enzyme, and anti-liver cytosol 1 antibodies, ACL1 antibodies. Morphologically, autoimmune hepatitis morphology, all of you know, is gross and microscopic appearance. Autoimmune hepatitis shares the same pattern as of acute and chronic viral hepatitis, which I've already explained you yesterday, and I also briefly explained you today. In autoimmune hepatitis, there is an early phase of parenchymal destruction followed by fibrosis and scarring. So In autoimmune hepatitis, the destruction is more and it is at an earlier stage, and there is also followed by fibrosis and scarring. Obviously, fibrosis and scarring is going to bring a change that is called cirrhosis of the liver. When it is in advanced stages, it is going to create cirrhosis of the liver. The features which can be seen in cases of autoimmune hepatitis can be severe necro-inflammatory activity, intense interface hepatitis, or foci of necrosis and parenchymal collapse. It means that there is severe necroinflammatory activity, meaning that there is severe necrosis of the hepatocyte surrounded by inflammatory infiltrate and intense interface hepatitis. I told you interface hepatitis is that kind of hepatitis or inflammation in where there is inflammation of the portal tract which is spilling over into the hepatic lobule. That is the interface hepatitis. And there are foci of necrosis as well. Large areas of necrosis can be seen, and parenchyma is completely collapsed because of necrosis of the hepatocyte. Plasma cell predominance is seen in the chronic inflammatory infiltrate. Instead of more lymphocytes, there will be more plasma cells in the chronic inflammatory infiltrate. Hepatocyte rosettes can be seen in the areas of marked activity, and this disease can give rise to liver failure. Following histological pattern can be seen as well. These are very severe hepatocyte injury with widespread confluent necrosis, little scarring. This pattern is seen in symptomatic acute hepatitis and represent first sign of the disease. Or there can be a mix of marked inflammation and some degree of scarring seen in early or late stages of disease. Or then comes the burned out cirrhosis with little necroinflammatory activity that has been preceded by years of subclinical disease. So you can see severe necroinflammatory infiltrate, or you can see interface hepatitis, focal area of necrosis and parenchymal collapse. I have just explained you. Plasma cell predominance is seen, hepatocyte rosettes can be seen, and this disease can give rise to liver failure. The additional histological feature are severe hepatocyte injury with widespread confluent necrosis. Confluent necrosis means large areas of necrosis can be seen together with little scarring, and this pattern is seen in symptomatic acute hepatitis, which represent first sign of disease. Or there can be a mixture of marked inflammation and some degree of scarring, which is seen in early or late stages of disease. Or there can be burnt out cirrhosis with little necroinflammatory activity that has been preceded by years of subclinical disease. So either a patient presents with severe hepatic injury and there are acute signs of hepatitis, or patient can present with a scarring, some degree of scarring with seen in early or late stages of disease. Or there can be only burned out scarring in which the patient is unaware of having a necroinflammatory disease and it was a subclinical type of disease which has led to cirrhosis of the liver. So in this case, you can see there is marked inflammation present. These are the all inflammatory infiltrate present in the portal area and they are going into the lobules. So this is interface hepatitis. And this is all portal tract inflammation present in the case of hepatitis, portal inflammation. Next is the drug and toxin induced injury. You have already done the drug and toxin induced injury when we did acute liver failure, and this is because of the direct toxicity of the drug. Acetaminophen is the most important drug which can cause acute hepatic injury or acute liver failure. So I hope autoimmune hepatitis is clear. I just go through it again. In the autoimmune hepatitis, I told you there are 3 autoimmune diseases which can affect the liver. These are autoimmune hepatitis, primary biliary cirrhosis, or primary sclerosing cholangitis. In autoimmune hepatitis, I told you there are 2 types of hepatitis, type A and type B. Type A is mostly seen in those individuals which are older and especially in the middle ages or older individual, and 4 kinds of autoantibodies are present which are anti-nuclear antibodies, anti-smooth muscle actin antibodies, anti-soluble liver antigen or liver pancreas antigen antibodies, and antibodies which are directed against the mitochondria, anti-mitochondrial antibodies. These are present in type 1. In type 2 is mostly seen in children, and these antibodies are anti-liver kidney microsomal antibodies which are directed against cytochrome P450 2D6 enzyme. This enzyme is the subtype of the enzyme 2D6, and anti-liver cytosol antibodies. Morphologically, I told you there is going to be necroinflammation, there is going to be interface hepatitis, prominence of plasma cell, hepatocyte rosettes can be seen, or three stages can be seen. In severe hepatitis, there is going to be injury of the liver with acute hepatitis or mix of marked inflammation and some degree of scarring, or patient can present with a burned out cirrhosis in which patient did not know that he or she was suffering from autoimmune hepatitis but comes out with a subclinical disease which can lead to cirrhosis. Okay, these were the photomicrograph I shown the interface hepatitis, and this is inflammation in the portal areas. So drug and toxin, I've told you we have already done. We did it when I did acute liver failure, so I'm not going into the details. And most important is acetoaminophene, which is a hepatotoxic drug, the most common cause of liver failure. And toxic metabolites, which are produced by cytochrome P450 in the zone 3 cells. As zone 3 cells are injured, their function is taken over by zone 2 cells and they get injured. And in severe overdose, periportal cells are also damaged, leading to acute liver failure. We have already done that, so I'm not going into the details. Next important is alcoholic liver disease. So I should tell you that acute viral hepatitis, which is caused by hepatotropic viruses, is very important in your viva point of view, your examination point of view, your SCQs, your MCQs, and your viva as well. So you should know all the serological markers, you should know the incubation period of this disease, and which hepatitis can give rise to acute illness and which hepatitis can give rise to acute plus chronic illness. So you have to know acute viral hepatitis caused by hepatotropic viruses very nicely for your clinical point of view as well as your examination point of view. Next is the alcoholic liver disease. Alcoholic liver disease is also very important from your examination point of view. Excessive alcohol consumption, which is ethanol, is the leading cause of liver disease, and in most of the Western countries, this is the most important leading cause of the disease as compared into our part of the world. Three distinct overlapping forms of alcoholic liver disease are seen. There are three forms. Number one is hepatocellular steatosis, or it is also called fatty change of the liver, alcoholic hepatitis or steatohepatitis, and number three is steatofibrosis. So hepatocellular steatosis means fatty change in the liver cells on the hepatocytes. Alcoholic hepatitis or steatohepatitis means that alcohol-induced fatty change is giving rise to a form of hepatitis which is called as alcoholic hepatitis or steatohepatitis. And number three is steatofibrosis. It means that the alcoholic hepatitis is now giving rise to a form of cirrhosis, which is because of first fatty chain, then hepatitis leading to cirrhosis. It is that pattern of scarring for fatty liver disease, including alcohol and cirrhosis in the late stages. Okay, so alcohol can give rise to hepatocellular steatosis or alcoholic hepatitis or steatofibrosis or cirrhosis of the liver. So what is hepatic steatosis or fatty liver? The lipid droplets, they accumulate into the hepatocytes after taking moderate quantity of alcohol. Lipid droplets increase with amount and chronicity of alcohol intake. So as the person is taking alcohol, small lipid droplets start accumulating into the hepatocytes. These lipid droplets, they combine to form larger droplets of lipids, and then the hepatocyte is all filled with becomes a lipid cell and nuclei pushed towards the periphery. This is called the fatty change or hepatic steatosis. Macroscopically, that is on the gross appearance, liver is enlarged, may become 4 to 6 kilogram in size, and it has a soft, yellow, and greasy appearance. When you do the naked eye examination of the liver, it is large liver, weighing up to 4 to 6 kilogram, and soft and yellow and greasy in consistency. Fatty change is reversible if the patient stops drinking, then it can be reversible. Alcoholic hepatitis, steatohepatitis, is characterized by hepatocyte swelling and necrosis. Single and scattered foci of cells undergo swelling, ballooning, and necrosis. Swelling results from accumulation of fat, water, and proteins, which are normally exported out of the hepatocyte. So what happens is the liver is still enlarged, their hepatocytes become swollen, and there is necrosis of hepatocyte as well. Single and scattered foci of cells undergo swelling. So swelling is of ballooning type, and then these swollen cells undergo necrosis. Why these swelling occurs? It is occur because of the accumulation of fat within the hepatocyte with water and proteins as well. Normally, they are exported out of the hepatocyte. The very important thing which you can see microscopically in this hepatocyte is Mallory-Denk bodies. What are Mallory-Denk bodies? These are usually present within the cytoplasm of the hepatocytes. These are eosinophilic material in the ballooned hepatocytes. These are made up of tangled skeins of intermediate filaments such as keratin 8 and keratin 18 in complex with other proteins like ubiquitin. So a very characteristic feature of the alcoholic hepatitis is presence of Mallory-Denk bodies which were not present in hepatitis. You remember that? Which is because of viral origin. In viral hepatitis B, I told you there will be ground glass appearance of hepatocyte and in the hepatitis, because of hepatitis C viral infection, there is going to be more plasmacytic, lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate present around the hepatocyte. But in case of alcoholic hepatitis, Mallory-Denk bodies are seen, which are dark eosinophilic material present within the hepatocytes, and this is composed of tangled skeins or intermediate filaments such as keratin 18 and 8 with complex of another proteins which is ubiquitin. Mallory-Denk bodies are characteristic but not specific for alcoholic liver disease, because these can also be present in non-alcoholic disease, Wilson's disease, and chronic biliary tract diseases. So we cannot say that if you see Mallory-Denk bodies, there has to be a history of alcohol intake to label it as alcoholic hepatitis. But in other cases like non-alcoholic liver disease, Wilson's disease, and chronic biliary tract diseases, Mallory-Denk bodies can be seen. Other differentiating point is neutrophilic infiltrate as compared to plasmacytic infiltrate. Neutrophilic permeate the hepatic lobule and accumulate along the degenerating hepatocyte, particularly those which having the Mallory-Denk bodies. They may be mixed with mononuclear cells. So in the viral hepatitis, because of hepatitis B and C and hepatitis A, I told you that there will be lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate, but in case of alcoholic hepatitis, the infiltrate will also contain neutrophils, especially in those cells which are around the Mallory-Denk bodies, and separated mononuclear cells can be seen as well. I hope the microscopic appearance is clear in the case of alcoholic hepatitis. So if you see this diagram, first there is going to be fatty chain in the liver, which is known as steatosis. If there is more exposure to the liver, if there is less exposure, this will become normal. If there is going to be more exposure to the alcohol, there is going to be hepatitis, liver cell necrosis, inflammation, Mallory-Denk bodies will be present with fatty chain. And if the person continues to take alcohol, repeated attacks will lead to cirrhosis of the liver with fibrosis, hyperplastic nodules can be seen. If there is abstinence in this stage, this can go back to steatosis. And if there is abstinence again, this can go to normal liver. And this stage can also go to normal liver. But once cirrhosis develops, this will not go back into the normal liver. So these are the stages in the alcoholic liver disease. I told you about the Mallory-Denk bodies. If you can see, these are the pinkish material. These are the pinkish material present within the hepatocytes, and these are all balloon cells which contain fat proteins in them. And this is, you can see bluish areas, these are fibrosis present in between. You can see normal pink hepatocyte. These are the areas of fibrosis which are present in the mesenteric stain. Okay. So I told you when there is going to be alcoholic liver disease, first there is going to be a hepatic steatosis of fatty liver. Macroscopically liver is large, and microscopically liver will show fat cells or fatty cells in them. And I told you in the alcoholic hepatitis, there going to be destruction of the hepatocyte with formation of Mallory-Denk bodies, and neutrophilic infiltrate is present. And now alcoholic steatofibrosis. What is alcoholic steatofibrosis? In this case, there is going to be alcoholic hepatitis accompanied by prominent activation of sinusoidal stellate cells and portal fibroblasts, giving rise to fibrosis. When I did histology, I told you that there are sinusoidal cells have stellate cells which lay down the fibrous tissue as well in case of injury to the liver. Fibrosis begins with sclerosis of central veins, perisinusoidal fibrosis, then accumulation. These fibers accumulate in the space of DESI of the centrilobular region, spreading outwards, encircling individual cells or small clusters of hepatocytes, in a chicken wire fence pattern. So fibrosis begins from the stellate cells which are present in the space of Descemet, and first they accumulate in the space of Descemet, and then there is going to be centrilobular regions fibrosis, and they spread in a chicken wire fence pattern. Fibrous scar eventually linked to portal tracts, then begin to condense into central portal fibrous septas. With developing nodularity of fibrosis, cirrhosis becomes established. So there is going to be fibrosis from portal area to portal area, or from central area to portal area. So these fibrous scars become dense, and this nodularity is going to give rise to cirrhosis of the liver. As alcohol intake continues over the long period, it leads to classical micronodular cirrhosis, or also known as Lennox cirrhosis. Cirrhosis which is caused by alcoholic intake is known as micronodular cirrhosis or Lennox cirrhosis. Early stages of fibrosis scarring can regress, but stopping alcohol intake. But as fibrosis continues, it gets difficult to revert back to normal, as I've told you earlier. In this stage, when there is going to be abstinence from the alcohol in case of hepatitis, or in case of fatty change, it can go back into normal. Once fibrosis is established, it will not go back into the normal liver. There is no going back into the normal liver. So I hope it is clear. The three stages of hepatitis, alcoholic hepatitis, are clear. Number one is hepatic steatosis, number two is steatotic hepatitis, and number three is alcoholic steatofibrosis or cirrhosis of the liver, which is also known as micronodular cirrhosis or Lennox cirrhosis. In this diagram, this is the gross appearance of the liver showing multinodularity, which are small nodules. This is known as alcoholic cirrhosis. In this picture, you can see this is a photomicrograph stained by Mason trichrome stain. You can see pink hepatocytes surrounded by blue fibrous tissue septas, and in this case, normal architecture of the liver is totally disturbed. Okay. So, how does this alcoholic liver disease occur? Because of the risk factors for alcoholic liver disease. Amount and duration of alcohol intake. The more the amount, the more the duration, the more the changes are going to be seen. So drinking pattern, if it continues, or binge drinkers, this is going to lead to hepatic cirrhosis or Lennox cirrhosis. Gender, women are more affected than men, and it is because of the presence of certain gastric enzymes which make women more susceptible to alcoholic liver disease as compared to men. Genetics, susceptibility genes, and phenotype of other chronic liver diseases like HEF gene heterozygous and MZ alpha-1 antitrypsin phenotype, they are also affected than other individuals. And certain types of chronic coexistent viral infections can also lead to cirrhosis of the liver, especially hepatitis C virus. And if a person is obese and malnutrition is there, this will also lead to hepatic liver disease. So why alcohol is affecting? Number one, alcohol itself is a hepatotoxic, and number two, gender. In female, it affects more as compared to men. Number three, the genetic makeup of the individual. And number four, if a coexistence hepatitis C viral infection is present, it can lead to rapidly developing alcoholic hepatitis and alcoholic liver disease. And nutrition, if the person is obese and malnourished, this will also lead to rapid development of alcoholic liver disease. So alcohol, it is metabolized into acetaldehyde by the alcohol dehydrogenase by CYP2 cytochrome P450 enzyme 2E1. Aldehyde dehydrogenase lead to into acetate. So microsomal ethanol oxidizing system and cytochrome P450 oxidizing system is metabolizing alcohol into acetaldehyde and acetate pathogenesis. The short-term ingestion of alcohol, that is 80 grams over 1 to several days, generally produces mild reasonable steatosis. It means if a person is taking less amount of alcohol, it will produce only mild fatty change in the liver. The daily intake of 80 grams per day lead to risk for severe hepatic injury. So if 160 grams per day for 10 to 20 years of alcohol is taken, it can lead to severe hepatic injury, and 10 to 15% of alcoholics will develop cirrhosis. So it depends upon the amount of ingested alcohol and how many days the person is consuming. If a person is consuming 80 grams per day, it can lead to severe hepatic injury. And if a person takes 160 grams per day over a long period of time of 10 to 20 years, it can lead to severe hepatic injury, and 10 to 15% of these alcoholics will go into cirrhosis. Women are more susceptible than men because of the estrogen dependent response to gut derived endotoxin. So in women, there is estrogen dependent gut derived endotoxin. That's why they are more susceptible to alcoholic liver disease as compared to men. That is the genetic difference. Sorry, and that is the difference because of the gender. Ethnic and genetic differences are also there. Cirrhosis rates are higher in African American than in white American drinkers. Genotypic polymorphism in detoxifying enzyme and some cytokine promoters may play a significant role in ethnic differences. It means that cirrhosis rates are different in cases of ethnic background and genetic differences because of the certain polymorphism in detoxifying enzyme which are present to detoxify the alcohol. ALDH2, a variant of aldehyde dehydrogenase found in 50% of Asian, has a very low activity. Individuals born with ALDH2 do not tolerate alcohol at all, leading to alcohol intolerance characterized by upper body flushing, nausea, and lethargy. So in the case of Asians who do not have aldehyde dehydrogenase type 2 enzyme, they cannot digest their alcohol, so it's going to be upper body flushing, nausea, and lethargy. Comorbid conditions. Comorbid condition means that the person is already having some liver problems, and on top he or she is taking alcohol. Iron overload and infections with hepatitis C virus and hepatitis B virus synergizes with alcohol, leading to increase in the alcohol liver disease. So these comorbid infections like hepatitis C virus, B virus, or iron overload can lead to enhancement of the alcoholic liver disease as compared to the individuals who do not harbor these infections. Okay, so who are going to be affected? As I've told you, that those who drink a lot of alcohol over a prolonged period of time, they can develop severe hepatic injury leading to cirrhosis. Women are more prone to develop alcoholic liver disease as compared to men because of the estrogen, which can lead to toxic metabolites in the gut. Then there are ethnic and genetic differences. Black Americans higher in African Americans than with white Americans. Okay, and differences in aldehyde dehydrogenase enzyme 2, which is not present in certain Asians, can also lead to increase in the alcoholic liver disease. And then comorbid in conditions. Pathogenesis. Hepatocellular steatosis results in shunting of normal substrates away from the catabolism and toward lipid biosynthesis as a result of increased generation of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide by the two major enzymes of alcohol catabolism, alcohol dehydrogenase and acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. So hepatocellular steatosis results because of shunting of normal substrates by the alcohol. Number two, by impaired assembly or secretions of lipoprotein. These lipoproteins which have to go out of the liver cell, they remain in the liver cell giving rise to fatty chain, and impaired peripheral catabolism of fat, releasing free fatty acids in the circulation. So alcohol will lead to acetaldehyde is an enzyme, and oxidative stress can lead to lipid peroxidation, and this can lead to immunological damage and necroinflammation and apoptosis. Again, the endotoxins and the Kupffer cell release cytokines, transforming growth factor beta and stellate cells. This can lead to fibrosis and collagen production, and hepatocyte damage will lead to necroinflammation and apoptosis. Causes of alcohol hepatitis are uncertain, but these factors can play a part. Acetaldehyde, the intermediate metabolite of the alcohol, induces lipid peroxidation and aldehyde protein adduct formation, further disrupting cytochrome, cytoskeleton, and membrane function. Cytochrome P450 metabolism produces reactive oxygen species that react with cellular proteins, damage membranes, and later hepatocellular function. So acetaldehyde, which is an intermediate metabolite of alcohol, it can lead to lipid peroxidation and acetaldehyde protein adduct formation, further disrupting the cytoskeleton. And cytochrome P450 itself produces reactive oxygen species, and these reactive oxygen species also interact with the cellular protein, damaging the membrane and alter the hepatocyte function. Alcohol alters hepatic metabolism of methionine, which decreases glutathione levels, sensitizes liver to oxidative injury. Cytochrome P450 enzyme in the liver increases alcohol catabolism in the endoplasmic reticule and enhances the conversion of other drugs to toxic metabolites like acetaminophen. Alcohol causes release of bacterial endotoxin from the gut into the portal circulation, inducing inflammatory responses in the liver due to activation of tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-6 or transforming growth factor beta. Simultaneous release of endothelin from endothelial cells causes vasoconstriction and contraction of activated myofibroblasts, stellate cells, leading to decrease in perfusion and portal hypertension. The clinical features are hepatic steatosis causes hepatomegaly, that is increase in the liver size with increase in liver function test. ALT and AST are raised. Alcoholic hepatitis appear acutely with symptoms from minimal to that of acute liver failure. Non-specific symptoms are also seen like malaise, anorexia, weight loss, upper abdominal pain, tender hepatomegaly. Alcoholic cirrhosis manifests like cirrhosis. I told you that in the chronic liver failure, there is going to be ascites, hepatic encephalopathy. These can be seen in the case of alcoholic cirrhosis as well. The complication of alcoholic liver disease is hepatic coma, massive gastrointestinal hemorrhage, intercurrent infections, and hepatocellular carcinoma after the cirrhosis developed, or hepatorenal syndrome, which I already described you when we did chronic hepatic failure. So I hope the pathogenesis is clear. So I'm going to unmute you. And if you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can send me later. If there are any questions, you can ask me now. Any questions from anyone? You can raise your hands. Okay, that finishes our lecture. Thank you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.